Hello and welcome everyone to Inspire. We inspire together, and I am your host, Sha Hayes. Tonight, we are honored and pleasure to have here with us Mike McCoy. Mike McCoy is a two-time combat veteran who is a documentary photographer and has had his work seen in the Washington Post, New York Times, a host of other publications. And we are so happy to have him here to discuss his journey and what he's done in his career and his passion that's brought him to where he is today. Well, hello.
Hey, how you guys doing?
I bet we need a round of applause. I somehow have to get some sound effects going. Hey, Mike.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
How are you?
Blessed and highly favored.
I love it.
Love it. I just want to say thank you for being a part of the show and coming to share your journey and inspire all of us.
Yes, as we're wearing our fire shirts.
Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for taking time to be a part of the show. I am so excited to learn more about you, your work, your journey, and it's just such a pleasure to have you. So Sha, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So as I was kind of going through trying to learn about just online, everybody has a footprint, a digital footprint online. I saw just the array of things that you've done. But as a child, what was your passion? What was what you wanted to do?
Damn. I mean, as a child, I didn't have a clue. You know, at first I thought that I wanted to be like a business person, a nurse, and like a soldier. So as I got older, I joined the military and worked in HR. But and I figured that was just like me living out my goals that I set in life without like knowing. But as you live and you get older, you get experience in life, your goals can like tend to change.
So you get into the military, and normally you have to have a specialty when you were there. So what was that? What was it when you were there? HR. So you went specifically to HR. So from leaving from military life and into civilian life, did you follow that career path, or did you go somewhere else after that?
I did for a little bit. Like once I got out, I used to work for Oracle Corporation. And I worked for them for a little while. Then I wound up taking a job with the Army's Human Resource Command. And it was a pretty sweet job. Like everyone I worked with, we had that like bond. But they wound up moving to Kentucky. And at the time, my pops was sick. And I was like, you know what, I just can't get up and move. So I stayed, wound up taking another job, pretty cool job. But then I wanted something closer to home. And once I took that job closer to home, that's when I realized, I'm like, you know what, this environment is toxic. I need to get up out of here and like focus on me.
And so when you say home, although you're Washington, D.C. based, is that your home base?
No, I'm from Baltimore, but I live in the D.C. area now.
Okay.
So like closer to home at that time was just like closer to where I was staying.
Right. And so you grew up in Baltimore and seeing all the different transitions of what Baltimore has been. So fast forward to you realizing, family being a big proponent in making decisions in your transitions of your career. What happened to make you decide I want to pick up a camera and see what I can do with it?
Like after going to Iraq twice, I mean, you realize you can't catch up on like everything you missed out on. Whether it was like, your friends and your family birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, parties. So, my thing was, why not just like document it?
And your documentation was just, I'm not going to date myself. I would pick up a box camera. Was yours a box camera? Did you have a full-fledged DSLR and all that kind of stuff? Was it like an extensive camera like that?
Well, as a kid, my dad had this little camera in the car, little film camera. And I played around with it. But, as you get older, you start meeting girls. You kind of put the camera down. But, like I said, it wasn't until I got to Iraq and I was just like, you know what? This is before people started taking selfies. So I had this little, cheap point and shoot. I would just take a picture, send it home to my mom to let her know I was cool. Everybody here got a black mom. And black mom worry about you. And when you lying, they know you lying. And she's like, yo, why Santa got a gun? I'm like, it's a decoration. And why him a tank? Don't worry about it. But I would take the pictures just to, give her some level of comfort. But then I would take pictures for my homies, and they would send it home to their families too. But but like I was saying, like once I got out, and then like my second tour to Iraq, my mom passed away. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm not here to. I can't catch up on everything I did before. So you got to document everything, from this moment forward.
Yeah. So when you decided that you wanted to make this something that of interest you that could make a living for you, did you seek out people to help you, that a mentor or?
I did. At first, and I never looked at this as like a way to make a living, but, I do have a mentor, and, one of my mentors is Jamel Shabazz, Army brother out of New York. I'm sure you've probably heard of him.
Yeah.
So I got Jamel. I got my homie Ruddy Roy. I got Sheila Pretty Bright. I got Dudley Brooks over the Washington Post. Brent Lewis, New York Times. All black brothers and sisters. That pour information into me, and once I get that information, I pour to other people. Because if you're going to make something, transpire, you got to share that information to keep it going.
Right. Well, what was something that they told you throughout your journey that stuck with you that you were able to take and, like you said, transfer over to other people?
Never give up. Be the best at whatever you do.
And so with never giving up, was it an easy road to get to where you are and getting that? Or was it, obstacles? What were some of the things that you could say that kind of made you, established to where you are now? And was it easy, or was it like challenges in that?
There's challenges in anything you do in life, but, when you look at photojournalism, you don't really hear of too many black photojournalists. You know about your Gordon Parks, about your, Fred Sweets or your John Whites, but you hear many more, white and other photographers of different races. So, for me, that was a challenge, especially working in like the world of politics. For example, working on Capitol Hill, it's only a handful of us out there. You have myself, you have, Sister Sharice May, you got Jamel Contis. It's only 3 black people that you see on the Hill, and we really don't see each other all the time at the same place. So for us, that's a challenge from inside of itself.
So speak to that portion of it, because is it an education component that has to do with it, or is it roadblocks and people hiring those people? So what happens in terms of people actually getting those jobs? Did you have to go to school and then navigate your way through an internship?
Well, for myself, I'm self-taught. Sharice May, she's self-taught. I believe Jamel's self-taught. Like a lot of people go to like journalism school. One thing, Ruddy Roy would tell me every year, and he was like, yo, you got these people going to Columbia and NYU, and they're graduating, so like look out for that, like me, like I said, I was self-taught based upon my experiences in life. My experiences in life, developed my eye, it made me more sensitive to like things that are going on.
And when you say self-taught, what are some of the elements that go into creating the stunning and just captivating images that you capture?
Like YouTube University, and like these books here, like Eli Reed, Black in America, the Gordon Parks Collected Works edition.
Really? Okay. So it's just about just really just going out there and doing the research, because some people think you're self-taught. They often think you just kind of figure it out and just keep going until you just, figure it out. But you do still have to go and do a lot of research, even if you don't go to the route.
Of course. You got to do the research, but you also got to put the work in. Like nothing's going to come to you like instantly.
Yeah. So then with that being the case, and you've taught yourself, you've gone on YouTube University, you stated, how do you get to the point where you landing a job and someone's saying, we want your work? What did you have to do? Is there a portfolio involved?
Of course there's a portfolio, but most importantly, with anything you do in life, it's all about relationships. I mean, you can have the best work in the world, but if you don't have relationships with people, there's a slim chance that your work may not get seen.
Yeah, and that goes with mostly anything, especially when we speak to a lot of people in the industry, that no matter across the board, it ends up being that way. There's only a few positions where your resume makes a difference. It's about you knowing someone to get your foot in the door. And so with that, are you tagging along and just being like, let me just, kind of work for you, or, volunteer before you can actually get the job? Is that even the relationship that's built, or they just be like, oh, I saw some of your work, I want you to come work for me? How does that start with you even building a relationship and then them wanting you to come work alongside them, or finding opportunities that you can work in?
Well, I mean, like, in my case, like I just had my work, I just built the relationships, it took time, but, eventually, everything fell in place. Like they say, what God has for you is for you. Can't nobody take it away.
This is true. And that's one of those things where that if you're constantly putting in the work, like you said, then those things will happen for you. So when you first picked up the camera, what was like the first thing that you felt like? I know you said you did it while you was, in the military, but once you got into civilian life, what was the kind of like the transformation for you in terms of what you wanted to shoot?
I always loved people, especially like, Black people. Like, if you look at like the history of like, news and history and just like photographs, Black and brown people have been photographed, but, often, without brothers like, Eli Reed and Gordon Parks, most of these photographs have come from people who lived outside of our communities. So my thing was, I feel like as a Black photographer, I can tell that story of someone who looks like me better than someone who lives outside the community, whether they are white or Black. Because oftentimes when we're photographed and we're documented, the perception may be misinterpreted.
Yes. And the image can tell so much in a moment. So explain, I guess, to the point of where, there are different kinds of careers that you can go into that, being a photojournalist. Can you explain because people think it's one aspect of like you're taking wedding pictures, and then there's people who work in politics that take all the pictures that are there. Like, explain the variations of positions, of fields.
I mean, when it comes to photography, I mean, there are like different career paths you could take. I just happen to choose photojournalism. I love portraits, and I do shoot portraits, but you may have people who may specialize in wedding photography, architectural, landscape, documentary, dog photography.
And it's just a matter of what your niche is. It's not about the fact of like, is your skill set and what you do transferable in every place and vice versa?
I don't want to say that. I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, I was hoping I didn't get any tough questions tonight, but like you guys put one under there.
What did you think this was going to be?
I don't know, a little tough. You guys got to help me blow the belt right there. But
and some questions resolve themselves with just being, I don't know, because it is one of those things where, because you are self-taught and you hone what you know how to do, but there's some people who have only stayed in their one lane and would never know if they had the capability of doing other things too as well. So.
Right. And that's the thing with photography, anything you do in life, like whatever it is that you have a passion for, learn that, master that. Don't try to sit there and, I want to master landscape photography. I want to master photojournalism. I want to landscape, boudoir. Find something, find your lane, stick in it. And it's okay to play around with other stuff, Like, I'm not a landscape photographer, but if I see something that catches my eye, I'll take a picture of it.
So I have a question for you, Mike. We talked about even yesterday, all of the things that transpired down in DC, and as a photojournalist, you end up in some of those type of events. How do you work through that, with some of those tense moments as a photographer?
I mean, I just go for instinct, vibes. My job as a photojournalist is to go out there and tell a story of what's happening, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I just go out there and like whenever I make a photograph, my intent is to make every photograph with honor and dignity. You know, even if I don't necessarily agree with, you know, what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is a portion about being impartial, because you have to be able to do that and shoot in those kind of situations. But speak to even the fact, as a photojournalist, most of them are put into dangerous situations. I mean, even in combat and things of that nature. Did some of your training in the military prepare you for being in those kind of situations like that?
It has, you know, like knowing how to, you know, sense or predict, like, you know, potential danger. I mean, like that military training definitely, you know, kicked in. And I mean, a lot of it is just common sense, you know, like if you feel like something isn't right and you're looking at your surroundings, and, you know, let's say, for instance, you're out there at a protest and it's, you know, everything's going good and, you know, things start to shift, you know, as a human being with common sense, you would say, you know what, things are starting to change. You know, not saying I have to go, but let me be a little more alert. Maybe I should take a step back. Or if I do want to stay, you know, in the mix of things, you know, start watching the body language of the police officers, you know, the demonstrators. You know, like for instance, if I'm noticing police officers in like regular uniforms, okay, excuse me, things are pretty cool. But you notice if they start putting the helmets and like riot gear, you know, there's the potential that things can change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and once you start to notice those things, you know, you start to make your adjustments accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And is that a position where you would maybe like take yourself to higher ground, and now you got to worry about adding the extra lens on so you can get a closer shot? Is that things you take in consideration if you're in a situation where maybe a protest may get a little out of hand? Is that where you take yourself, or you try to stay in the midst of it all?
Well, I mean, like in a perfect world, you would love to stay in the midst of everything, but you know, like your safety is like the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get that and be safe, cool. But you know, you got to think about like, you know, the next week, the next year, the next 5 years, because you know you may create something that needs to be talked about. You know, just how we're sitting here now. You know, 5 years ago, I never thought I would be sitting here talking to you guys. But you got to think about the your future.
Right.
So, you know, like I said, you know, safety is everything, especially as a minority out there covering that stuff. You know, like a press credential doesn't necessarily guarantee you safeness.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And even when you're watching certain things like that, and you see people say they're there with their own security, even major news networks saying they have security around you.
Right.
You know, you're out on your own little island out there, so you have to be mindful of that as well. So
right. Well, I mean, but it all depends on who you work for. You know, like I have certain clients that I work for, and if there's something that's going on that's pretty like that can be pretty, I don't want to say violent, but if things can kind of get out of hand, you know, we'll have security teams in place where you know you got to check in with this and give what we call in the military a sit rep, a situation report.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'll give a sit rep. You know, before you leave your house. You know, you check in with them. You get to your location, check in with them, and every so often, you know, you send a text or whatever. You check in, but at the same time, you know, the security personnel are monitoring what's going on in the area. And if things get out of hand, you know, they'll set up an extraction to get you out of there. If things like kind of get beyond like, you know, the madness.
Yeah, as we have seen.
So, Mike, Sha had mentioned in your intro, you working with Time Magazine, the Washington Post, New York Times, New Yorker, Wall Street Journal, Getty Images, and I mean, it just goes on and on and on. How did it all begin? Like, as far as how do you get your work in front of them? Do you have to? Do you go there knowing that you're working for one particular person and then you're taking photos for them, or do you work for all of them at the same time and shop your photos? How does that work?
Well, you know, like I work as a freelancer, and like I said earlier, everything's about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, like you just keep going out, you just keep shooting, you keep making it work, and you keep building relationships. You know, like everything in this industry is based upon relationships.
And speaking about the part of the freelancer, I mean, I'm assuming there's some staff photographers and photojournalists, and there's those who are freelancers. It's, I guess, kind of for people who may not know the difference between being a freelancer and being an actual staffed photojournalist or photographer, for that matter. Well,
you know, every agency, you know, has freelancers. You know, depending on the size of the agency, some may have more than others. But you know, the staffer, you know, you're a full-time employee. You know, pension benefits, whatever they may offer. But, the freelancers, you're pretty much work for hire.
Mm-hmm.
They call you for a job, or you may pitch a job and they say, hey, you know what, go ahead and do it. But, that's the key difference.
Now, is there a union involved, or you're part of where they kind of, make sure there's representation for that aspect of it, or is it just you as a freelancer?
Unfortunately, there's no union set in place for freelance photographers.
Okay.
Hopefully that would change one day.
Yeah, because it seems like the work, being in the same like I am, it's like if you want to, have certain things positioned for you, that would be the difference. And I guess that's probably why there's so limited amount of African Americans or people of color in that field, because there hasn't been oversight for that. But that's another show. But so then when you have now gone on and, honed your craft and I've looked at your page and see how stunning it is. What is after you taking pictures, what is the process once you've taken it? I mean, you've seen the dark rooms. I'm assuming you don't do that as much, but is there a post-production that you have to do after you've taken the shots?
There is, but like when you're out on assignment, you pretty much have everything with you. Your cameras, your laptop, so you don't really have that much time to like sit there and like really work on photos. So, the kids are like pretty much, as we call it in the industry, is like getting it right in camera. So your job is to get everything right in camera so that you don't have to do a lot of work in post-production, because when you're working in news, you're working in real time.
Yeah.
You got to get stuff out like instantly. Like for instance, I was over at the White House one day, outside of the White House, and this was back when I want to say like right after the Parkland shooting. And I'm working, and my editor shoots me a text, and he was like, "Hey, we need to move something right now." So this group that was in front of the White House, they started moving towards the Capitol. I had to jump out of the protest to get something out onto the newswire, but luckily, we had like other photographers that were already at the Capitol. So I knew that if I were to stop, I couldn't catch back up to that group before I got to the Capitol.
No,
so everything moved at a fast pace.
Then that made me think about in terms of like with things moving at a fast pace. Now that we have these smartphones and people are able to capture images just as fast as you being on the scene, how much is that as a kind of like a reliable aspect to you shooting? And do you oftentimes ever have to use your phone when moments like that catch up with you?
Sometimes I do. Like I've shot images with my cell phone. Like cell phones, especially nowadays, they take some really, really great images. If you look back into like the Gordon Parks days, or like the early days of film cameras, those cameras didn't do a lot. The technology in these devices here, they do a whole lot, and you can still make, quality work.
And so if you're put into the position where that's like something you have to do, it's not an either or, just like whatever makes sense in the moment kind of call. Okay.
Right.
And that's good to know, because you see these commercials saying, oh, you can shoot this, you can shoot that. And to know that somebody in your professional level can say, I can use my phone, and the actual quality of it still kind of relies on as you would if you had your own camera. So that's good to know. And it's almost something too to note for people who think they got to go out and buy an expensive camera just to get started. Is that something where just using your cell phone is a way to, if you have an interest, to just kind of go out and shoot a few things?
If that's the only camera you have, use the gear that you have. There's no need to go out and buy the latest and greatest, because if you don't know how to, use it properly, and I don't want to say you're wasting money, but you're kind of wasting money. Like I tell people, whatever camera you have, use that, master that camera. Use that camera until you can't use it no more. Because if you're not out, doing work that's going to be seen all over the world, people want to buy these cameras where you can transmit the camera or do certain features. But if you don't have a need for these features and these, what's that saying they use? Tricks and whistles or whatever.
The bells.
You know what I'm talking about. Bells and whistles, yeah. If you don't need the bells and whistles, like, why buy it?
Yeah. Especially if you have no idea, then you have something that you don't even know, unless you want to take a class. Now, I know they have like conservatory classes. Would you suggest for someone who doesn't want to actually go through a whole 4 years, 2 years, or however long it is, to just take those classes to kind of get them acclimated to just the basics of photography?
Well, I mean, like that's a good starter point, but ultimately, it's all about the investment you're willing to make within yourself. Before you put some type of monetary investment out there, because you can learn a lot from books.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot from YouTube. You can learn a lot by mentorship. If you can afford to take some, workshops or classes in between, that's a plus, but it's not a must.
It's not a requirement to be, because you said being self-taught and being as acclaimed as you are, it matters that you invested into yourself by finding and researching and working and building relationships.
Right.
So, Mike, can you take us or walk us through a day in the life of a photojournalist? What is it like?
It depends on what you're covering. I mean, if you're on Capitol Hill, it could be hurry up and wait. If you're out on the street, I mean, it could be fast moving where you don't really have time to do anything.
So you wake up, I mean, you're out the house pretty early, I can imagine.
It depends on what's going on,
Oh, okay. And what about traveling? Like, do you travel to other places? Do you focus on DC?
I travel with work, but due to the pandemic, I've been staying pretty local.
Okay.
Will be normally if as a freelancer, I guess an on location job outside of your district area, the DMV area, that normally they would call you for an assignment that you would typically cover.
It could be anything, for instance, the last time I traveled for work was back in late February, early March, and it was for the 57th anniversary of the Bloody Sunday. And during that assignment, I was fortunate enough to make my last photo of John Lewis crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
That was awesome. Okay, great. So those moments like that, I mean, I guess even being someone who's African American and having to feel the gravity of those moments, and I know as a journalist, people always tell you supposed to be impartial. You're not really supposed to insert your own personal feelings and stories. But as a Black man, does that trying to translate to you when you're telling your stories through these images?
Like I said before, everything I make with honor and dignity. I just go off of my vibe. I ask the Lord to guide me in the direction that these pictures need to be, and I just had to go from there.
So it's almost like it takes over you. It's not even it's almost like you're being used as a vessel in a moment, because you're not consciously I got to get this in, it got to be this way, and it got to be that way. You're just kind of letting yourself be used in those moments. So that's good that you have that, because not everybody in questioning their spirituality feel that way, because they think it's all about the craft and learning, and you have the techniques and the skills. But if you, I guess, in terms of thinking about, you were saying in terms of not investing this much money into things, this advice that you think about, you would tell somebody when they're saying, I want to get into this field. What is something that you didn't know 10 years ago that you know now?
Books, mentors, relationships, practice.
So how did you? We talk about mentor a lot. I mean, we talked about it on other shows. How did you meet your mentor? Because a lot of times it's people don't even know how to begin. Were you in a particular room and you walked up to someone and said, "Hey," how did you do that? And especially for our young people watching today, how do they make those approaches, to people to get support and to learn from them?
Well, like what Jamel Shabazz, I've been following Jamel's work for ever. And this was, I want to say September 24, 2016, first day that the African American Museum opened. And, at the time I didn't have a press credential or anything. So it's you know what? I want to be inside where everything is going down, because Oprah going to be in there, everybody and mama going to be there. And I woke up a little late and I was like, you know what? I ain't going nowhere. And I'm sitting in my living room watching TV, and I see that, the Howard Band and the Howard Choir is performing. You know what? I watch this on TV, and for some reason, something just yo, get out there and just see what's going on. And it took me 2 hours to get out off the couch. I get off the couch, go to the train station, hop on the train, get down there, and I'm walking up Constitution Avenue, and I see Jamel Shabazz. I'm like, yo, That's brother Jamel. And I'm just like, you know what? Don't go into groupie mode. Walk up, introduce yourself like a man. And I did, and I'm like, hey, Mr. Shabazz, my name is Mike McCoy. You know, I love your work. I've been following your work. And he was like, nice to meet you, young brother. I know who you are. And I was like, whatever, man. You know who I am. And, you know, we must have talked for like every bit of like 2 or 3 hours. And it's like photographers out, we don't really talk like that. No, hey, what's going on? Blah, 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 blah. Keep it moving. And like, I missed shots, he missed shots, but we just had that connection and that vibe. And, you know, as I was like, you know what? We've been talking long enough. I would love to talk, but I know you got to capture this day. I want to capture this day too. You know, you have a business card or something? And he was like, nah, here, take my number. And like, I was just like, whoa. Wow. And like, on that day, you know, it sparked that relationship. But, you know, we also have things in common. You know, I'm a vet, he's a vet. So, you know, we have that foundation other than photography.
He was able to let you in, and that's awesome. So when you say he told you, I already know who you are, what footprint had you already kind of laid down for yourself that he would have known your name from things?
Honestly, I didn't even know.
So it was something you had done, which just goes to show the connectivity of things, because oftentimes we're doing things that people are watching that we don't know and realize that they have been. Because like I said, when it's, you know, so limited number of people, when they see work being put out there, and you made it just social media, you know, anywhere you could have put it, the connection came from that too as well.
Right.
And I ask that because a lot of times we tell you, you know, people in terms of being mindful of what things you put out there because people are watching. And in that case, in the instance where there's something that he saw of you and your work where he may have gotten connected to it and it kind of was in the back of his mind. And as the universe allowed it to be, you all met and connected right there on the streets, because he could have already been inside the building, but you saw him as he's walking down the street. And that's, you know, an awesome journey and testimony of like how just where you are in line in the moment where he was at that same time.
It was meant.
Yeah. And
so
go ahead, Key.
No, I was going to just ask you, what's one thing that you've learned about yourself over your career, throughout your career?
That I'm a work in progress. I'm always trying to get better.
Yeah, I think we all are.
And then you can apply that to like anything, you know, regardless of your career field or your industry, you know, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
And insightful to know that, because oftentimes people think they reached a pivotal of their careers and there's nothing else for them to gain from it. So, you know, and with ever changing technology comes something else that I'm assuming that you have to learn. So I guess when I'm being a novice and know very little when it comes down to cameras, as technology is changing, has that impacted how you approach the cameras you use, or do you stick with the same one throughout?
You know, like right now I'm currently endorsed by Fujifilm, but you know, at one time I didn't have the latest like Fujifilm. You know, like, you know, this time, you know, during the last inauguration, you know, I was out photographing the inauguration with this camera right here. You know, this is a Fujifilm X100T, and it had the 35 millimeter lens. You know, I didn't have a zoom or anything like that, you know?
And I was just going to say, because it looks retro, but it doesn't. It still has an attachment you can add onto it.
No, it just has, you know, one lens, and you have to use repeated zooms. You know, like, and I would shoot a lot of stuff with that. You know, like a lot of people are just shooting with these, you know, $5,000 and $6,000, $7,000 cameras. But, you know, I made it work with this. So, you know, I made it a point not to chase gear. So, I mean, I just had to do what I have to do, what I have to do it with.
So speak to about Fujifilm. So I saw that you were among 15 other photographers who were accepted in this Fujifilm. So what is that, and what does that mean to be a part of that?
You know, so Fujifilm's a camera brand that's been around for a while. And, you know, back in the day, you know, you had Kodak film, but, you know, Fujifilm, you know, for film users, that was the film that people of color were using because the skin tones came out better. You know, though that film was designed for, photograph people of color. But, like, let's fast forward to, like, today, Fujifilm, they decided to make me an ambassador for the brand. So now I'm an ex-photographer. And, there's only been like a handful of like Black ex-photographers. So.
And you said as a Black ex-photographer, what does that mean?
The ex-photographer is like they're, represented. Well, that means you're represented by the brand.
Got it. Okay. So then, what that means, and then I'm assuming you have an exclusivity with them that you can't be with anyone else who would be considered a competitor to them. So when you have that, I mean, is that when you're given that? I'm assuming they give you equipment and all that, but does that mean you get better jobs, or you get better positionings because of that, or just having that on there is like being a SAG actor makes difference to us as opposed to someone who's not?
I wouldn't even go that far to saying. I mean, I just think if they see some potential in you and you become an ex-photographer, it is what it is. But they see the potential in you.
But it is an accolade that makes a difference to where if you were just going out to seek jobs or something, someone saw that would make a difference, that they know that you're a part of that.
I don't think it would necessarily, make a difference in, getting jobs. But I mean, you never know who's making decisions.
Right. Yeah.
So I think you're being modest, Michael. I think it does probably make it. I think you're playing around. I mean, 15 photojournalists out of, millions of people who probably do this work, hundreds, thousands of people. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So I wouldn't play that down anymore.
He's like, I don't need no awards.
I'm an award-winning photographer. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to take it for what it is.
So what is something when you were saying to yourself that you're always getting better, you're trying to improve yourself? What is some of the kind of like a quote or mantra or something that you say to yourself that kind of, inspire you?
Prayer, before I go out and shoot, I try to pray and just be like, yo, God, give these eyes the vision that you deem as possible. And also, like one thing Brother Jamel always would tell me, you got to get some music to kind of get into your flow. So I would always, listen to like Marvin Gaye, what's going on, brother? So that right there helps me a lot throughout my, thought process when I photograph.
So that is something. It's like one of those things where you have to have an external kind of sound. So what style of music? So you said Marvin Gaye. Is there a certain kind of music when depending on what you're going to shoot that you put on that kind of triggers something in you?
Man, I like it all, man. I have like playlists on my phone for like photographing. I have everything from, Marvin Gaye to Talib Kweli, Common, Mos Def.
So it's
T.I., could be anybody.
But so does it, when you put the music in, is it a kind of like a transportation of like a transporting of your mind because you're kind of like closed off from other things? Or does it help you kind of like, how a fighter gets in the ring and they kind of got to get pumped up? Does it do that for you?
It just puts me in my zone, in my element.
That's amazing. I wonder, because I know that, for myself, I always say that whenever I'm reading, I have to have music on because for some reason my brain always gets more distracted when it's silence. So does it kind of allow you to kind of focus mentally on what you're going into and knowing that, like you said, prayer connects you? And so from there, you kind of just go into that zone automatically?
Yeah, I mean, it helps you get over any anxiety. Well, it helps with the anxiety that you may be facing with your assignment. Let's say, for instance, I could have been like photographing President Obama, and I may have been a little nervous, but that music just kind of helps mellow you out so that you don't really feel all of that. I mean, you're still gonna have pressure, of course, but it takes the ease off of that pressure to help you, go in and focus on the job and get it done.
So talk about the first time you did have to go into that, because you were saying Jamel told you about the music. how was that moment before you had that advice, going into it, knowing, okay, I have this pressure of doing this? Tell about the first time you had that experience.
I mean, I don't really remember offhand, but like I've always been into music. At that time that Marvin Gaye wasn't on that playlist, but once Marvin Gaye was on that playlist, if you just listen to the words of the song, it just makes you slow down, it makes you think, and it just opens your mind up to your creative side. Because that song is about peace.
Right. Yeah, and that's true, because it kind of walks through your mind. When you go through, I guess I can't imagine, like when you shoot, like a mother asking a mother what's her favorite child, but has there ever been an experience that you had that was memorable, that kind of stayed with you more than any of the other ones you've had?
I mean, I don't really have a favorite picture, but if anything, I would say the photograph I made of John Lewis crossing Edmund Pettus Bridge. Because when I took that photograph, I never thought that would be my last photograph of John Lewis that I would make.
Oh wow! And talk about tear sheets, so that people understand what that means in terms of some people know things as a portfolio, but speak to what that means, having a tear sheets.
I mean, tear sheets are basically like printouts of publications that you may have made the front page, or some part of the magazine or newspaper.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then also about copywriting, like there's ASCAP and BMI for songwriters. What do you have to go through in terms of process to ensure that there's no duplication of your images?
They have platforms like Google. What is that? Google Image Search, or I forgot the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
But Google has a platform where you can put your picture in to see if your picture's been used, and there are other softwares out there that could let you know the same too.
Okay, so when you have that, you have to rely on your own self doing it in order for you to see someone out there. There's not like I said, there's not a publishing aspect of it where they kind of monitor whether or not your image has been used, because you get paid for your usage of your images. So you would have to do the work on your own, unless you work for a publication where they would probably have something in place. But as a freelancer, it's all up to you to ensure that.
Right. Like every now and then, I'm sure photographers, just Google themselves to see where work is. And if you see something that doesn't look right, I mean, you reach out, maybe consult a lawyer, or just, do what you do.
Mm-hmm. But is it ever a time when, I guess, especially when you're starting out, that you feel like it's a compliment that someone's taking your work and, kind of not duplicated, but are using it in some kind of way? Or do you feel like, no, you should ask my permission first, no matter what?
Can you repeat that?
I said, when you're starting out, if you found that somebody was using your work somewhere, do you feel like it's an insult that they've done it without asking you, or do you feel like it's a compliment that they've taken your work without asking?
Well, I mean, like, no one can really reuse your work. I mean, they can use your work as inspiration, but like, what I do is what I do, and what you do is what you do.
Right. But I mean, for instance, like if I had a magazine and I was starting the magazine up, and I've gone on your page and your images, and I'm using your images of the Cowboys in Oklahoma.
Oh, like actually using my actual images?
Yes.
Oh, that's a different story. I mean, like, you got to do what's appropriate.
Okay. So, but I'm saying, if you're starting out and you find that someone's using that, would you advise someone to make it an issue, as opposed to seeing it though, okay, well, my work is getting some recognition online because people are taking my images and using it?
Yeah, I mean, I would just take that up with that person, and hopefully they take it down. But if not,
Okay.
So I don't know if we talked about this, but would you like to share any challenges that you faced in your career and how you got through it?
I mean, you deal with challenges every day, especially as a Black photojournalist. Like if you're working in the field that's like, generally dominated by white men, I mean, you're going to be faced with challenges. I mean, I just kept working hard, and like I said before, building relationships.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between being a Black photojournalist and, I guess, someone? Is it just opportunities, or just let me not answer the question with the question, but what is the differences between being Black photojournalist and not?
opportunities have a lot to do with it. Like, pre-George Floyd, depending on who you were, I mean, you were getting work, but, since George Floyd, more Black photojournalists and photographers have been getting more exposure. But, like I said before, everything's about relationships, everything's about opportunity, and it's also about perspective.
So it's one of those things that as uprising has happened, there are people that's starting to look around and go, oh, there's a whole lot of white people around here. And then now the opportunities are automatically becoming opened up because of that. I mean, it's sad it had to be the case of that, but it is the reality of that now people have had to take a look because now the spotlight is being shined brighter and brighter and brighter as if we have not had all this being a scenario before. But I mean, as a person who is a photojournalist, do you feel like there's a place of activism that is portrayed through your photos, or do you feel like you could stay silent and let the picture speak for itself?
Yeah, I try my best to let my pictures speak for themselves, and like I said, I do everything from the heart, everything taking more honor and dignity, and it's up for the viewers of the content to make the decision themselves.
One of the images. Okay.
Go ahead, Sha.
I was going to say one of the images that have come out with the most recent news is disparity of things that they saw over the summer to what has happened within the last couple of days. When you, I guess, look at those type of images in yourself and say to yourself, how do you portray that for yourself in terms of when you go out there to say to someone, okay, look at here and then look at there, but you kind of let that just kind of take the pictures and let people kind of come up with it on their own.
Right. Before I go out and even when I'm out, I'm just like, regardless if it was, George Floyd, Freddie Gray, Ahmaud Arbery, without the camera, to me, that could have been me. And I just let the work speak for itself.
So Mike, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, 10 years? What's on your bucket list?
Well, with the state of this current pandemic, hopefully alive, but,
Amen.
Yeah, right.
I know I'm getting older. I would still love to be in the field, but I would love to have the chance to, teach and mentor, up and coming, photographers and photojournalists of color.
I love it. We've got to.
Now, would you do that in a university setting, or would you do that like having your own classes?
I don't know. I mean, like, as long as I get it done.
You're gonna get it done.
Black people in there.
That's gonna be good.
So I guess we try to kind of leave it where we ask someone to kind of, if you were talking to someone who is ready to jumpstart, get into, you've kind of touched on some of the stuff, but what would be your underlying advice to someone who wants to get into this field?
Well, for starters, if you have a 9-to-5, don't necessarily quit your job so soon. Study, read books, practice, put that work in. Build relationships. Like I said, relationships are important. Regardless of what industry you work in. If you don't have relationships, you don't have nothing at all. And have accountability and be able to take criticism. Because something that you may deem as a hot picture may not necessarily be hot to someone else.
That's good to know, because being subjective, it's like you said, somebody may see something differently than what you saw, as much as you think it's great. And that's a good thing to know, because a lot of times people think that, well, I got the shot, and when you, I guess when you go down there, and I guess I'm trying to look at it from a lens of someone else wanting to get into this field, being in a space of like anything that's going on, what does getting the shot mean? Like, is it just something you felt, or specifically a task that someone said, when you go down there, we're looking for A and Z?
Well, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, it's what comes in from here. It's what my eyes see.
And that's where a lot of, because, as a journalist, typically people are giving a script of things they want them to say. Of course, like if they're on the beat or out on the road, they're, a lot of times it's improv of them having to speak on it. So the photo aspect of it speaks to where you're kind of creating, and you're given that assignment to be in a space, but not specifically told, I need you to do this, I need you to get that, I need you to get that. Or is it both?
I mean, it can be a combination of both, but for the most part, like I said, I do everything from the heart, and wherever my heart guides me, and that's where my fingers go, and I just take it from there.
So when you're working for these different publications and you are shooting for them, there's a course assignment attached to what you're getting, and ultimately whatever they shoot, can they say, no, we don't want none of these, and that's not what we're looking for? Or typically it's like, okay, we'll some of this is good.
Well, I mean, people generally hire you for your skill set and your style. So like one thing I don't do, I don't change my style based upon what I think somebody wants.
Okay.
If you hire me because of who I am and my creative ability. So I don't really change who I am.
It's like almost like being a painter, an artist, because you're not asking someone to sit there and then curate or commentary over someone's painting. You're allowing them to create on their own. So it's the same thing that gets captured as being a photographer, because they're the ones that are going to create the image that's going to tell the story.
Yeah, you hit it right up, hit the nail on the nose.
Okay, well that's good enough, because I often think about, when you think about when you take photos for yourself, you could tell somebody, oh, I want to stand this way, I want to be this way, and it's completely different. And that's why we kind of touched on the different professions, because if you're doing a self-portrait type of thing, it's different than when you're going out to create and tell a story. That person is the author, no matter how you want it to be portrayed.
Right.
Okay. Well, it's so good, because when we have this platform, we want it to be a space for people to be informed and educated, because about stuff that we often see. Because I know that prior to meeting you, I think Peter Sosa was the only other, I don't know if he's considered a photojournalist, but he is specifically one of Obama's personal photographers. Right. And I only saw him through social media because he became an activist through his pictures and images. And so a lot of times we miss out on the people who, like yourself, are out here telling the story through your images and being inspiration without knowing that you are. Because I know there's going to be a lot of people who see this video afterwards and be so inspired by your journey. And we thank you for being a part of it. Is it anything else beyond what we've talked about that you wanted to say before we go?
I mean, like just be you, do you whatever you want to do, whether photography, print journalism, just be the best that you can be, and just never give up.
Well, we thank you so much for taking your time out to share your journey with us and be an inspiration to someone who's going to watch this, and it's going to, kind of little light bulb was going to go off and let them know that this is something they wanted to do and probably been holding back from doing. Because I hear people, I've always wanted to do that. And, I know it's not for the faint of heart, because it's not just something you just can pick up tomorrow and be a photojournalist, but it kind of allows people to see the inner workings of what happens. And so we thank you for sharing your journey.
I want to thank you guys for just having me on.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for taking time out and spending it with us this evening. We appreciate
you. Absolutely. Definitely looking forward to the next time.
Yes, and if you are not following Mike, please follow Mike on Instagram, Facebook, Michael McCoy Photography. You can find him on Facebook and Instagram. Where else can we find you, Mike?
Newspapers, my website.
He like all the places I'm published.
You can go on Google and Google Michael A. McCoy Photography, and you will find him in all of his impressive work. It's an honor to have you here with us, and I look forward to seeing more of your work. I've been following you for a while, and your images speaks volumes to me, and everything that you capture, I'm like, I feel like I'm there. I really do. And, we can't thank you enough for all you do.
I mean, I can't take all the credit myself. I mean, you got brothers out there, like I said, Jamel Shabazz, you got Tony Mobley out of DC, you got Idris Solomon out of New York. And even like yesterday, you have sisters like Sharice May. Sharice May, like I said, she's a Black photojournalist, and she was actually inside the Capitol when the Capitol got overran. So, you got people like that, and they're putting that work in and like making things happen. So show them.
No, I was saying we're not saying that you're taking away from it, but we're highlighting and spotlighting you because of all the things you have done. We understand there's other people out there paving the way as well, but Michael McCoy is the one right now who we look at and saw your work and saw and we'll make sure we share to everyone because they need to know your name and that it's going to be somebody that people will remember forever.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you. And hold tight for a second, Mike.
All right.
Sha, I'll let you finish up.
And to everyone, our audience, I want to thank you for joining us. I know these are the most unbelievable times, but we will get through it. And we are so happy that we have a platform like this, that we can be able to share others' journeys and to have it be an inspiration to you, to ourselves, to your youth, to your children, just allowing them to understand that there are professions and careers and things that they can go into, and just hearing people's journeys, because oftentimes we are getting stuck into our ruts of life and we don't understand that people have had obstacles and challenges to get to where they are. And it's so inspiring to hear those stories. And I tip my hat off to Michael McCoy, because like I said, when I see all his work, I literally am like, instead of this Mickey Mouse stuff on the back of my daughter's wall, I want to have my entire wall blanketed with his stuff. So we thank him. And if you know anyone who has been an inspiration to you, or if you've inspired anyone, please email us at inspirebyananis, right at the bottom of the screen here, over there, at gmail.com. And make sure you follow us on all social media. Make sure you like and share and subscribe. And if you want to support this show, we're trying to continue it on, and you can do so by Cash Apping $ at Keyana Tennant on Cash App. We thank you for anything you can do. But again, it's just sharing the page and telling others about it, and emailing us about others who have inspired you. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. Until then, continue being an inspiration to others.